There is a moment in every generation when everything changes, not with a loud announcement or a global warning, but silently, almost invisibly, like a shift in the air that only a few people notice at first. And right now, we are living in one of those moments. A moment where the decisions you make today are quietly shaping a future that will either reward you beyond your imagination or leave you struggling to understand what went wrong. Because while most people are busy repeating the same routines, believing that tomorrow will look like yesterday, something massive is happening beneath the surface. Something that is rewriting the rules of success. And that something is artificial intelligence, a force that is not coming in the future but is already here, already transforming industries, already replacing tasks, already creating opportunities for those who are paying attention and silently closing doors for those who are not. And the truth is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront a reality that most people prefer to ignore, that the world does not owe you stability, that progress does not wait for permission, and that every single day you delay adapting is a decision that carries a cost, even if you cannot see it yet, because the cost of a decision is rarely immediate. It is delayed. It accumulates. It compounds quietly until one day it becomes impossible to ignore. And by then, it feels like everything changed overnight, even though it was happening slowly the entire time. And this is where the real danger lies, not in the speed of change itself, but in the illusion of time, the belief that you still have plenty of it, that you can start tomorrow, next week, next year, without realizing that the people who will dominate the future are not the ones who waited for certainty, but the ones who acted in uncertainty, who chose to learn before they felt ready, who chose to experiment before they felt confident, who chose to move while others were still thinking about moving. Because in a world that is accelerating this fast, hesitation is no longer neutral. It is a decision in itself, a decision to fall behind slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly, until the gap between where you are and where you could have been becomes so wide that it feels impossible to close. And this is not a story about technology. It is a story about choices, about the small, seemingly insignificant decisions that you make every day. The choice to spend an hour learning something new or consuming content that leaves no lasting value. The choice to face discomfort or avoid it. The choice to prepare for a changing world or pretend that nothing is changing. And what makes this even more powerful is that these choices do not feel dramatic in the moment. They feel ordinary, harmless, easy to justify, which is exactly why they are so dangerous. Because they shape your future without triggering any immediate alarm. They quietly determine the trajectory of your life while you are busy thinking about something else. And right now, somewhere in the world, there is someone who is making a different set of choices. Someone who decided to understand how AI works instead of dismissing it. Someone who chose to build skills that are aligned with the future instead of relying on what worked in the past. Someone who is investing time today to create leverage tomorrow. And that person is not necessarily smarter than you, not more talented, not more fortunate. They simply made a different decision. And that difference, repeated consistently over time, is about to create a gap that will be very difficult to bridge. Because success in this new era is not about working harder. It is about working differently. It is about understanding where the world is going and positioning yourself accordingly. And the people who fail to do this will not fail because they lack potential. They will fail because they underestimated the cost of their choices, because they believed that doing nothing was safe, because they confused comfort with security, not realizing that in a rapidly changing environment, comfort is often the most dangerous place to be, because it keeps you still while everything around you is moving. And movement is what creates opportunities. Movement is what generates growth. Movement is what allows you to adapt before it becomes necessary. And the longer you stay still, the more you depend on a version of reality that is slowly disappearing. And this is why so many people feel stuck without understanding why. Because they are playing by rules that no longer apply. They are investing time in skills that are losing value. They are waiting for opportunities that are not coming back. And instead of questioning their strategy, They question themselves. They doubt their abilities. They assume they are the problem, when in reality, the problem is not who they are. It is the choices they are making, the patterns they are repeating, the signals they are ignoring. And once you understand this, everything changes. Because you realize that your future is not determined by a single big decision, but by thousands of small ones. By what you choose to do with your time, your focus, your energy, your attention. Because attention is the most valuable currency in the modern world, and where you direct it determines what you become. And if your attention is constantly consumed by distractions, by noise, by content that entertains but does not educate, then your growth will always be limited. But if you choose to direct your attention towards learning, towards building, towards understanding how the world is evolving, then you begin to create an advantage that compounds over time. And compounding is one of the most powerful forces that exist, because it does not rely on dramatic changes. It relies on consistency, on repetition, on the accumulation of small improvements that eventually lead to massive results. And this is why the gap between those who succeed and those who struggle often looks sudden from the outside. Because people only see the result, not the process. They see the outcome, not the decisions that created it. And they assume that success happened quickly, when in reality, it was built slowly, choice by choice, day by day, long before it became visible. And the same is true for failure. It rarely happens all at once. It builds quietly, through neglect, through inaction, through the decision to ignore what needs to be addressed. And this is where the concept of the cost of choices becomes undeniable. Because every decision you make carries a price, whether you see it or not, whether you feel it or not. And the price is not always paid immediately. Sometimes it is paid months or years later, when the opportunity you did not prepare for appears and you are not ready. When the industry you relied on shifts and you have no alternative. When the skills you invested in lose relevance and you have to start from scratch. And in those moments, the true cost becomes clear, not just in terms of money, but in terms of time, of missed opportunities, of paths that are no longer available. And this is why awareness is so powerful, because it allows you to see the consequences before they fully materialize. It gives you the chance to change direction while there is still time, to make different choices while the cost of doing so is still manageable. And the reality is that you do not need to predict the future perfectly. You do not need to have everything figured out. You simply need to be willing to move, to learn, to adapt, to stay curious, to stay engaged with what is happening around you. Because the worst decision you can make in a world that is constantly evolving is to remain passive, to assume that things will somehow work out without deliberate action, because they will not. Not in this environment, not at this pace. And the people who understand this are already positioning themselves for what comes next. They are building skills that are flexible, that are transferable, that allow them to navigate uncertainty with confidence. And they are not waiting for permission to start. They are not waiting for the perfect moment. They are not waiting for clarity, because they understand that clarity often comes from action, not before it. And this is the mindset that separates those who thrive from those who struggle. The willingness to act despite uncertainty. The ability to make decisions without having all the answers. The courage to move forward when standing still feels safer. And if you really think about it, every major transformation in your life has come from a decision. A moment where you chose one path over another, and that choice set off a chain reaction of events that led you to where you are now. And the same principle applies to your future. The decisions you make today are setting the foundation for the life you will experience tomorrow. Whether you are aware of it or not, whether you intend it or not. And the only real question is whether you are making those decisions consciously or unconsciously. Whether you are directing your life or reacting to it. Because there is a massive difference between the two. And that difference becomes more significant as the pace of change increases. And right now, the pace is accelerating in a way that we have never seen before. Which means that the margin for error is shrinking, the cost of bad decisions is increasing, and the rewards for good decisions are expanding. creating a world where the gap between outcomes is wider than ever, and this can either be an opportunity or a threat, depending on how you choose to respond. Because ultimately, that is what everything comes down to. Not the technology, not the economy, not the circumstances, but your response to them, your willingness to adapt, your ability to recognize when change is necessary, your commitment to making decisions that align with where the world is going instead of where it has been. And if there is one thing that history has shown us repeatedly, it is that those who adapt early are the ones who benefit the most. Not because they are lucky, but because they are prepared. Because they are willing to do what others are not. Because they understand that the cost of action is almost always lower than the cost of inaction, even if it does not feel that way in the moment. And this is the paradox that traps so many people. The idea that staying the same is safe, when in reality, it is often the riskiest choice you can make, especially in a world that refuses to stay the same. And so as you move forward from this moment, as you continue making decisions, both big and small, remember that each one carries a cost. Each one is shaping your future in ways that you may not fully understand yet. And while you cannot control everything that happens, you can control how you respond. You can control what you choose to focus on, what you choose to learn, what you choose to build. And those choices, repeated over time, will determine whether you become someone who looks back with regret or someone who looks back with gratitude, someone who wonders what could have been, or someone who knows they took advantage of what was. Because in the end, the difference between those two outcomes is not luck, it is not talent, it is not circumstance, it is the cost of their choices.